Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Partly Cloudy podcast. We're so excited you've joined us for this Friday, for one of the last Fridays, or the last Friday in May. And I'm super excited you could share it with us. My name's Avery Gray.
And I'm Chief Meteorologist Jenna Petracci, back again for the second week in a row on the Partly Cloudy pod. Starting to get used to it.
Yes.
Sorry, Miller. Miller may never come back. Just kidding.
No, he's coming back.
He's coming back. And I was already making the schedule in advance through July, and I don't know if I'll be back on the pod again until August. So enjoy it while it lasts, y'all. This episode is going to be all about the 2026 NOAA hurricane forecast. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has released their 2026 forecast, and we are going to get all into that today.
That's right, and this episode kind of hits a little closer to home for me because my fiance just moved to Florida. Bless his heart, he's an engineer, but he asked me the other day, are we in hurricane season yet?
He should know that.
I was like, you should know that.
Everyone,
no, we have a couple of days.
Yeah, in my opinion, everyone should know that, but especially him because he claims to be pretty knowledgeable on the weather.
Right,
so
he likes it probably just as much as I do.
Yeah, so we got to step that up. But I feel like all Florida residents really know a lot about tropics. They have to.
And I feel like that has really transitioned here as well. I feel like a lot of people, especially after Helene, are a lot more aware of the tropics.
Yeah, tropics, and not even just tropics, but just weather in general. I mean, the storms we've been dealing with this past week, I've had so many people ask questions about it that they typically wouldn't ask a couple years back. So we know you guys have a lot of questions about this year's season. So that's why we're going to break it all down for you today. And we want to start out just get right into it with NOAA's official 2026 hurricane season forecast. And it's good. Yeah. Overall. Yeah. We love to see this.
There is a wide range though. I was pretty not disappointed, I guess shocked to see 8 to 14. I feel like that's a large range of storms.
Yes, because 8, I mean, I should have done the digging on this, but I don't know the last time we've had only 8 storms.
Yeah, definitely not within the past 5 years.
Yep, and we'll get into that too in a moment. But yeah, 8 to 14 is a big range because you can see there the average is 14. Right. So it's definitely possible this could end up being an average season, and you know, it's also possible they could be off by 1 or 2, and we could end up having 15 or 16, and then that ends up even being slightly above average because they're giving it a 55% chance of a below average season. So pretty good shot, but there's still a 10% chance it becomes above average, and around a 30% chance it's just near average, around 12 to 15 storms. So yeah, big range there on the named storms. Then when we're talking about hurricanes specifically, they're going with 3 to 6, average being 7, so a little bit below that, and then major hurricanes 1 to 3. Man, just 1 would be amazing. Yeah. Or none. Right. I mean, that would be great if we had just no major hurricanes this year. Especially after what happened last year with Melissa. We ended the season with a bang.
We had quite a few become major hurricanes. I know Aaron became a major hurricane. Definitely Melissa, of course. I feel like I'm missing one. Yeah.
You know, I can't remember all of them because a lot of them weren't important to us.
And then the twins.
They were fish storms. The twins.
Yeah, the twins.
The close call with the twins, the Fujiwara effect. We had a lot of interesting things going on last year that really played in our favor to give us a below average season last year. But hopefully we get even less storms this year. But we always say, as meteorologists, every single meteorologist knows this line. It only takes one storm to make it a memorable season or potentially a disastrous season, unfortunately. So I don't want you to see this and think we can just relax all season long. We're not going to get impacted here in Georgia and South Carolina because that's definitely not the case. And it's even possible that when we're under a weather pattern that we're in this year, that we end up having a lot of storms form a little bit closer to home. So places we have to watch will be like the South Carolina, Georgia coastline, in the Gulf. So, and that's all because of El Nino, and that is the main reason why the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is forecasting a below average season. It's all because of El Nino. You've probably heard of this before. You've probably heard of La Nina. We use these terms a lot as meteorologists. So what is happening here with El Nino? So you're looking at the equatorial Pacific, where the water is well above average. It's very, very warm out there, and that is happening because we typically have the trade winds move from east to west. That's the normal setup, and that usually transports the warmer water that's typically off the coast of Mexico and South America a little bit closer to Asia. But what's happening this year is that those trade winds are a little bit weaker, and sometimes they can even reverse in direction. And when that happens, we have all of that very warm water just pile up there at the equatorial Pacific, right off the coast of, Mexico, the U.S., South America. And with all of that very warm water rises. And when you have rising air, creates clouds, moisture, rain, and that ends up creating wind shear for us on the other side over in the Caribbean and the Atlantic. And when you have all of that warm water over in the Pacific, it just really overpowers the water temperatures in the Atlantic basin, so it ends up being cooler over there. So where we're located in the Atlantic basin, where we watch for hurricane development, we are expecting slightly cooler water temperatures and more wind shear. And wind shear is great. Wind shear helps to prevent hurricanes from forming to begin with, and also helps to prevent them from intensifying. So wind shear really works in our favor. So that is very beneficial for hurricane season, but it's really going to be focused around the Caribbean. So like I mentioned, there's still the possibility that places a little bit closer to home, up in the northern Gulf or the Atlantic coastline, we could still have some development areas there, especially because even though the water is cooler in the Caribbean than the Atlantic, it's not cold by any means. We still have really warm water here as well. It's just not quite as warm as it is in the Pacific. And you can really see that here on our sea surface temperature anomaly map. You can tell exactly where El Nino is almost developing already. And Avery, you can read those percentages for us of when is El Nino really going to officially form.
Yeah, so El Nino, there's an 82% chance for development that it will form between May of this year to July of this year. This map is a good indicator that it's already starting to form. So that is a good thing for us because, something that we've been saying, we've known that this is going to take place really, I guess, since February or March. We've kind of been anticipating this, but it hadn't happened yet. I feel like these sea surface temperature anomaly map is showing that, that is in the works right now, that it's starting to form. So that is a great sign for us. And it's also going to affect our weather whenever it comes to the winter and how that's going to play a role in things for our winter season. And we'll talk about that later in the On Our Radar segment. But we have a 96 to 98% chance of it persisting into the winter season, which 98% chance, that's pretty dang high, it's guaranteed that that's going to happen for us. And not only that, but it is expected to strengthen as we go further into the year as we head towards winter, which will impact us weather and climate-wise, not necessarily tropical-wise, but it would impact our weather quite a bit.
Right, yeah. El Nino plays a role in so many ways, not just here in the U.S. either, but all across the globe. It plays a factor in the weather, and it's actually likely going to be what's known as a super El Nino. You may have heard that term tossed around, and just one of the strongest El Nino seasons we've had in history. So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. I also wanted to read you the information from NOAA directly about this season. It says that the Atlantic season is expected to be below average due to competing factors. El Nino is expected to develop and intensify during the hurricane season, while ocean temperatures in the Atlantic are expected to be slightly warmer warmer than normal, and trade winds are likely weaker than average. So El Nino conditions tend to support less tropical storms and hurricanes, while warmer ocean temperatures and low winds support a more active year. And they also said that although El Nino's impact in the Atlantic Basin can often suppress hurricane development, there is still uncertainty in how each season will unfold. And that is why it's essential to review your hurricane preparedness plan now. And just like we said, it only takes one storm to make for a very bad season.
Yeah.
So their outlook is for overall seasonal activity based on large-scale weather and climate patterns. It does not indicate whether or when any storms may affect land, as that is determined by short-term and variable weather patterns. The outlook is not a landfall forecast. That is very important. And we're going to go ahead and toss it to break.
Welcome back, and now you're taking a look at the total named storms within the past 4 years. In 2022, it was 14 named storms that season, which is right on average, and kind of, counterintuitive because that was a La Nina year. 2022 was a La Nina season, and so you would expect an above average season with La Nina, because as we're talking about El Nino, how that gives us more wind shear, which weakens hurricanes, and cooler sea surface temperatures for El Nino. La Nina does the opposite, and it gives us very warm sea surface temperatures, and it gives us less wind shear to work with, so a lot of tropical systems can form. But there was one very crucial role for that season that impacted the really just ability for these tropical systems to form, and that was the Saharan dust that year. I remember that pretty well. I remember my car being covered in summer with the Saharan dust, and I was like, what is this? It's not pollen season. We've already done the pollen thing, but my car was just covered in dust, and that helped us out quite a bit in 2022 because we were expecting a pretty active season, and we didn't get that because of how the dust played a huge key factor in that season. And that's just like we were talking about right before break, that, we can have these forecasts and these outlooks, but it's just an outlook of what could happen. It all depends on what comes down to those very specific, very close in time, short term, properties that we have going on for us in the environment.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine if we had a strong El Nino and Saharan dust. Then we really could be talking only around eight named storms.
Yeah.
But imagine we have a strong El Nino, but we have really warm water temperatures and the Saharan dust is just not really present. Then we could have a near average season again. But yeah, Saharan dust is one of those things where it's good and bad. We love it because it prevents those storms from developing, but it does bring us the dust here, which is not good for those who suffer from respiratory issues. It does bring us some beautiful sunsets, though, too.
That is true.
Kind of some good and bad things there with the dust. And then in 2022, we also had Hurricane Ian. You may remember that one well. That was my first big storm I covered here as a meteorologist at WJBF. Tim and I were tracking it.
Cool.
I remember it was a bit of a underwhelming storm, though. We had meteorologist Sherry Shealy out there as well doing a live report, and there just wasn't really much to talk about it. That used to be the standard, though. A lot of times we would have what we looked like could be, a significant weather event from these hurricanes, and then it ended up working in our favor and we didn't get many impacts. And then, of course, everything changed after Helene and Debbie in 2025. And now we feel like we get impacted by those tropical systems. But back then in 2022 and 2023, we were spared a good bit from Ian. We also had Nicole that year that brought us rain and wind in November. That was a late season storm. But really wasn't bad for us at all in 2022. And then in 2023, that was an active season for sure. Despite it being an El Nino, just like what we have now, it ended up being a very active season with 20 named storms. And you may remember that year because I remember this was talked about a lot, just like with the dust. We had really, really warm water temperatures.
Like record breaking.
Yeah, record breaking, like 100 degrees, even like right off the coast of Florida where it should not be nearly that warm. And these storms were just popping off. And we had Idalia in 2023. That one actually started close to home in the Southern Gulf and Northern Caribbean area. So Idalia brought us a little bit more impacts than Ian. But overall, 2022 and 23, not too bad for us. But then we get to 2024, Avery.
Yeah, we get to 2024, and we were transitioning from that strong El Nino in 2023, which actually didn't really impact the tropics as much as we would have thought it would, to a La Nina season once again. So we were transitioning out of strong El Nino into La Nina for that year, and we had three pretty impactful hurricanes, some of which you know very well, Helene, Debbie, and Milton, all within the year 2024. And that kind of, goes to show the saying that we always say, it only takes one hurricane to make a season bad.
Yep, it really depends on the landfall and where these storms set up. And then in 2025, we were spared a good bit. Avery, I know you remember Chantal.
Yes.
That was your first.
Yeah,
I can't even really call it a big moment. It wasn't very big.
It wasn't,
but it was a moment.
It wasn't very big. It was a moment. Tropical storm Chantal, kind of went into the coast of South Carolina. We did not see much here in the CSRA from it, and that was very, very thankful for that. That was the only landfalling storm that we had that year, was Tropical Storm Chantal. And we had the Azores and Bermuda high pressure systems that steered many of those storms out to sea. And other than Chantal, the other one that was very impactful, not for us here in the United States, but for the island of Jamaica, was, of course, very catastrophic Hurricane Melissa.
Yeah, devastating end to the season after what, so many people were saying was such a bust of a season.
Right.
We really weren't getting any named storms up early in the season, very inactive, and then all of a sudden
September was really when everything started kicking off, and Melissa, of course, devastated the island of Jamaica. I have a friend who's getting married in June, and they have their honeymoon in Montego Bay.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be at one of the resorts, and it will be the resort's first week back open. Wow. And they get married in mid-June.
Wow. And glad they're going in mid-June before hurricane season gets very active. But it's amazing how they are able to rebuild
so
that fast.
Quick.
Yeah. I've already seen so many people I know on social media visit Jamaica. It's like, wow. It's still such a beautiful island, and they're so resilient.
It really did, kind of spare the Montego Bay area, because it went more inland once it hit and made landfall, which of course was a lot more devastating for the residential areas of Jamaica.
Yep. So that's a review of the last 4 seasons. We already talked about this a good bit, so just going to breeze through this. Once again, we've got the above average temperatures that play a factor in the forecast, and that's what we're seeing still in the Caribbean, the Gulf, and parts of the Atlantic. So even though it is cooler, and you can see that temperature difference, not quite the darker red you're seeing in the equatorial Pacific, but we are still trending a little bit above average, which could fuel those storms. We only need temperatures to be at 80 degrees for hurricanes and tropical systems to develop, and that's what we are starting to see. Now, off the coast of Africa, it's still below average, and parts of the northern Atlantic seeing more so those lower 70s. But here's a look at the current sea surface temperatures. I will say, my apologies, this graphic says record warmth because this graphic was actually back from the 2023 season when we had record warmth, so disregard that. This is not record warmth, but it is getting very warm out there, temperatures in the 80s.
Yeah, very, very warm. And just to point out that, even in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf, we're already seeing warmer than average temperatures that Jenna just pointed out. And not saying that this is going to be anywhere similar to 2023 and 2024 when we had those extremely hot temperatures in the, Atlantic Basin, the Gulf, Caribbean, all of those things. But, that's just something to keep in mind as we have these forecasts coming out, and how it played a role in 2023. That was a strong El Nino, and they had 20 storms that year just because of how hot the water is. The water's already warm enough for development, so we're really just going to be banking on the wind shear to play a role and play a factor in keeping us kind of at bay for this season.
We are rooting for that wind shear, and we are also rooting for the Azores and Bermuda High to create that wind shear as well. Avery touched on this a moment ago, how that high pressure really helps to drive some of the storms out to sea. It also produces wind shear, and that happened a lot in 2025, where we'd have these tropical waves form off the coast of Africa, and then they would run into that wind shear, and they were just not able to develop. So we are also rooting for that high pressure out there to work in our favor. So those are some of the things that we look for when it comes to hurricane season and what we can expect. And we're going to go back to break, and when we return, we'll show you the list of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season names. So stay with us.
Welcome back. Here is the list of the tropical storm / hurricane names for the 2026 Atlantic season. I don't even think we'll get to R for this year because we're only expecting 14 named storms. But if we do, that's my mom's name, Renee. So hopefully we don't get that as a hurricane because I love her to death. But she's a hurricane in itself. So if there's a hurricane named after her, I can only imagine. I'm just kidding. If there was a beautiful name, though. If there was a Hurricane Avery, it would be pretty bad too. Well, I'm my mother's daughter. So.
But could you imagine though, with Avery being an A? I mean, you're never really going to be.
I'm never going to be too strong. My name is safe.
Yeah, you're safe. Mine's in the danger zone for sure. A J name,
right?
I mean, the I names have historically been known to be very significant. M's as well.
Yeah.
L's, I believe. We have a few of those. But, let us know on social media what you guys think of these names. I mean, it's kind of a mix of some very simple ones and then some very complicated ones. I mean, there's one on there, the E name. Edward. You would think it would be Eduardo.
Right.
At least that's what I was thinking. I when I was typing this, I kept looking, and I was like, Edward. Okay.
Cristobal.
Yeah.
What a name. I was at the graduation ceremony at Mississippi State, and one of the person's name was Theopolis.
Oh, wow.
Theopolis. And I was like, wow, like, what a powerful name. Like, whose name is Theopolis?
Yeah.
This kid's name was Theopolis. But yeah, Cristobal, if you're looking for unique names, just go through the list of all of the
for baby names.
Hurricanes, yeah.
Seriously. I mean, do you remember Isazias from like a couple years back?
I thought that was Isais.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I still can't remember. I think it was Isais.
Yeah, I think it was. And then Joaquin, of course, impacted South Carolina, but that was like, pretty odd name, and people started making memes of it, like, oh, are you walking or are you running to the grocery store for this hurricane? No, or I'm Joaquin, like I'm walking or something like
Everyone
that.
Everyone has fun with the names.
Yeah. Dolly, hopefully Hurricane Dolly isn't.
Yeah, and Nana. I know. You can't have a bad Nana.
Right, Hurricane Nana.
Wilfred sounds a little intimidating. And
Vicky.
Omar.
If we get to V, the Hurricane Vicky.
She could be a sassy one.
Yeah, I've always said that V names, like I will never name my daughter with a name that starts with a V, like Veronica, Vicky, Vivian, whatever, because V, someone who has a name with a V is, pretty.
My grandmother is a Vivian.
Really?
And
is she up there? Is she?
She's got a little sass.
Yeah.
Sweet lady, but a little sass here and there.
Right.
And then Kyle. I feel like there was a Kyle not too long ago.
Yeah.
Hurricane Kyle could be good or bad. Leah, that's unique. Haven't heard of a bad Leah.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the names. Let us know if your name is on the list. And once again, these are tropical storm and hurricane names. So what does it take to become a tropical storm? Well, that is 39 to 73 mile per hour winds. Yep. Minimal damage there. Cat 1, 74 to 95. That's when we're in the moderate damage range. And then Cat 2, 96 to 110. And then so on. Cat 5 ends up being 157 plus mile per hour winds, catastrophic damage there. We are hoping for none of those this year.
That's right. And just a reminder that, even though it could be a tropical storm or a Category 1 hurricane, I mean, those were kind of the limits that we were breaking with Hurricane Helene. It just transitioned into that tropical storm as it made landfall to the CSRA. So it really just depends on what quadrant we get hit with.
Yeah.
Because some could bring us really powerful winds like we saw with Helene, and then others could bring us torrential rain and flooding like we saw with Hurricane Matthew.
Yeah,
so it really just depends.
And Avery and Miller are going to be talking about that, the quadrants of a hurricane, the breakdown, how they form, really doing a deep dive into the structure of hurricanes coming up in our June episodes. When we come back, we're going to be showing you the What's on Our Radar segment and kind of talk about what we can expect for the month of June. Stay with us.
Welcome back to another segment of On Our Radar. It's been a while since we've had a segment of On Our Radar, and love to see our faces up there. So glad I could get one of me and Jenna, because Jenna's been on the pod for so many episodes.
I'm officially in the What's on Our Radar segment. And Avery, what is on our radar?
We have an omega block pattern coming for the month of June, or the first week of June, but as we start the month of June. This is kind of tricky because the omega block pattern is historically known to bring us sunny, warm, and dry weather. You know, it kind of plays into that heat dome many times that we talk about in the summer. But this time, due to the placements of the low pressure systems and the high pressure system in the middle, it's actually going to bring us cooler weather and wetter weather because of the low pressure system that's all the way up in the far northeast. That low pressure system is going to dip down the jet stream right over us. Very similar pattern to what we see during the winter months that bring us, you know, the Arctic air, but it's during the summer, so even though it's a lot cooler in the Northeast, it's not exactly Arctic,
right?
And it's going to push those cooler temperatures down to our area, and that jet stream being right over us going to allow for forcing mechanisms for showers and thunderstorms to form. So it's going to bring our temperatures down quite a bit. We're expecting the upper 70s as we hit the month of June.
Crazy, but
insane.
Yeah, to see this blue color here from June 3rd to June 9th, we are forecasting a couple of days in the upper 70s for next week.
Yeah.
Of course, we're still a week out when we're filming this, so that could change. But even highs of 80, 82 degrees, I mean, that's around 5-6 degrees below average.
Right.
Typically, we could easily start the month of June with temperatures at 90, 95. We've already hit 94, 93. We hit 93 twice. So we're easily in that territory of some 90s, and that is not going to be the case. So all the cooler weather lovers are in luck. However, it is looking like a fairly wet pattern persisting into June as well. We've even seen the American model and the European model try to spin up some tropical activity down there in the Gulf already. Of course, we're not even touching on that because likely won't happen, but we're just in this very tropical pattern where we've got this tropical moisture coming in. It's looking like we're going to be very wet and cooler, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what we are forecasting with El Nino, and it really does impact the temperatures and the amount of moisture we see down here in the southern U.S. because of the placement of the subtropical jet stream. So you may remember the summer of 2022, we were stuck in some very cloudy and wet days, and it was cooler, and I just remember it well because my husband had just moved, boyfriend at the time, had just moved in to Augusta from Florida, and he loves the warm weather, and it was humid because anytime you have moisture in the summer, it's going to be humid, so he was loving that, but he was not a fan of the 80-degree days in the summer, and I'm sure we had some 70-degree days too. Yeah, it was just a very dreary, gloomy summer, and that was in El Nino. So yeah, that is what we could potentially see this summer as well. And as we go into the winter, like we were mentioning, we are forecasting a wetter winter season. So even though we have been dealing with a very significant drought lately, we may be saying goodbye to that very, very soon.
I hope so.
We're already getting close to saying goodbye to it this week.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the update.
Yeah, I am very excited. And by the time this airs, the update will have come out. So we'll be posting all about that, of course, and sharing it in the newscast.
Yeah.
And yeah, between, June being right around the corner and some potential tropical systems developing that bring us some wet weather, and with this El Nino forming, we could end up really seeing some significant rainfall over the next several months.
which of course is always going to be beneficial. Thank you for joining us for, once again, another episode of the Partly Cloudy podcast. And thank you, Jenna, for being on here and sharing your expertise.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to follow us on social media and tune in again every Friday for another episode of the Partly Cloudy podcast.
We'll see ya. Bye.